you wouldn't look twice at Oak Ridge. One gas station, 2 barbershops, and a diner where the sweet tea tastes like redemption. But inside a weathered clapboard church perched on the town's edge, its paint peeling like old hymns from tired lips, something eternal stirred. The dusty air of Oak Ridge clung to the afternoon sun like hope clings to a whisper. And down on the creaking wooden floor, knelt Sister Amara Wells. Head bowed, hands clasped, her voice drifted up in holy cadence. Soft, but strong enough to rattle the gates of heaven. If angels ever had a favorite sound, it would have been the way Amara prayed. She wasn't flashy. She was faithful. Honey-brown skin kissed by the southern sun, her crown of coiled curls always wrapped in a satin scarf, not for style, but for reverence. Her wardrobe was modest, her heels were sensible, but her faith? Titanic. Amara didn't just talk to God. She conversed with him. Like 2 old friends on a front porch with lemonade and a long list of things to set right. Every Wednesday night, without fail, she scribbled one name in her weathered leather-bound prayer journal, Jalen Rivers. Not the Jalen who made headlines or spoke to crowds. No. The Jalen they didn't understand. The boy with fire in his chest and ashes in his life. The boy who once sat at the back of the church smelling like street fights and stale disappointment. The boy with no father, a sick mother, and a record of suspensions longer than a church fan on a hot day. Oak Ridge had written him off. Trouble, they muttered. A waste of good oxygen. But Amara saw beyond the broken shoes and bruised ego. She saw root where others saw rot. He's not a lost cause, she whispered one night as she hovered over his name, her fingers trembling but her spirit bold. He's a seed. And I've got the water. She prayed like it mattered, because to her, it did. She prayed for his mind to clear, for his steps to be ordered, for angels to intercept him at every wrong turn. She prayed he'd find a reason to believe in something again. And not just once. Every week. Others gave up. She wrote his name down again. And again. Tears stained the ink some nights, but she never skipped a week. Because Amara didn't need him to be perfect. She just needed him to be alive long enough for the promise to wake up inside him. She'd seen it before. The unlikely rise of those marked by mercy. And deep down, she knew. God doesn't throw people away. He plants them. And some seeds only bloom after the storm. The church had emptied out, the last hallelujah echoing off wooden beams as folding chairs clattered and the scent of fried fish from the fellowship hall wafted into the night. Outside, the streetlights flickered like uncertain promises. And just beyond the church steps, he lingered. Jalen Rivers. Leaning against a rusted chain-link fence, hoodie frayed at the elbows, jeans slouched with the kind of sag that said, "Don't ask me nothin'." He had the look of a boy trying to be invisible, except for the firestorm behind his eyes. A cocktail of defiance and desperation. Amara had just locked the sanctuary door when she saw him. "You need something, baby?" she asked gently. He didn't move. Just watched her. Then finally, "You believe all this stuff you pray about?" It wasn't taunting. It was raw. The kind of question you ask when hope is a rumor you can't afford to believe. Amara tilted her head, that same little smile curving like a parable. "Enough to pray for you." His eyes darted. "You don't even know me." She stepped forward, the gravel crunching under her church flats. "I don't have to. God does. And that's enough for me." He scoffed, more out of habit than conviction. But she saw it, the twitch of a soul caught off guard. Like someone had just touched a wound he forgot he had. She opened her tote and pulled out a sandwich, wrapped in wax paper. "You eaten?" He hesitated. Hunger always did make pride sit down. He took the sandwich slowly, like it might bite him first. Then she handed him something else, worn but dignified. A leather Bible. tabs sticking out like battle flags. "Start with Proverbs," she said. "It'll teach you how to walk like a king before you ever wear a crown." He blinked, confused. "A king?" Her eyes didn't waver. "You were made for more than street corners and survival. There's royalty in your blood, you just don't know your lineage yet." He laughed, low, bitter. "You sound crazy." "No," she said softly, "I sound prophetic." For a beat, silence settled between them. He looked at the sandwich, then the Bible. Two things he never expected to be offered in the same breath. "You think God really cares about someone like me?" She didn't miss a beat. "I know he does. And I know this. If you ever let him in, really let him in, the world won't know what hit it." He stared at her. The streetlight behind her flickered once, then steadied, casting her in gold like something out of an old psalm. "You'll be a king someday, Jalen," she said, turning to go. "But not without a fight." He didn't answer. Just watched her walk into the night, her silhouette framed by stained glass shadows and southern humidity. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like trash. He felt seen. And in his hand, warm from her touch, sat the weapon that would one day change his life. A sandwich. A Bible. And a word. Time didn't shout. It slipped quietly through the back door, changing seasons while no one was watching. The Oak Ridge church still stood, still sang, still swayed. But the boy who once stood outside its walls had long since vanished from its streets. Amara Wells never saw him again. Not in the pews. Not on the streets. Not even in passing. He was gone. But her prayers? Oh, they remained. Every week, without fail, her fingers would trace that name in her weathered journal, Jalen R. No updates. No letters. No phone calls. Just the steady rhythm of intercession and belief. She didn't need a status report. She had a promise. In that quiet church, beneath the stained glass light that painted her pew in hues of ruby and sapphire, Amara fought battles no one saw. Tears soaked pages. Declarations spilled like oil. Scriptures highlighted in gold danced beside his name. "He shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, the effectual fervent prayer of a righteous woman availeth much. Before you were formed, I knew you," she prayed when her knees ached. She prayed when others told her to let go. She prayed when doubt whispered, maybe it didn't work. But Amara didn't believe in maybe. She believed in miracles. Meanwhile, somewhere miles away, Jalen Rivers was changing. Word trickled back through the grapevine, as it always does in small-town church communities. One usher mentioned he'd moved to Atlanta to care for his dying mother. Another said he'd gotten off the streets, stopped drinking, started reading, studying, even. Then came the whispers, he'd earned a scholarship. Got his degree. Got loud about justice. Got louder about change. Got cleaned up and called out. Amara never confirmed it. She didn't need to. Her faith wasn't anchored in updates. It was anchored in God's character. Each night, she'd whisper into the heavens, "Lord, wherever Jalen is, let him walk like a king." She never asked to see the fruit. She just kept watering the seed. Because that's what real intercession is, obedience without applause. And deep down, she knew. When God writes a story, silence doesn't mean absence. It means preparation. So she kept praying. He kept rising. And somewhere between her whispered amen and his next big decision, he became a man she wouldn't recognize. But heaven did. 10 years later, America didn't just see him, they felt him. Jalen Rivers, the name rolled through newsrooms, college campuses, and Capitol corridors like thunder after a long drought. The boy once overlooked on a church curb had become a force. The youngest state senator in Georgia. With a voice like velvet-wrapped steel and eyes that burned with the fire of injustice, Jalen didn't just speak, he summoned change. Every debate he entered, he shifted the atmosphere. Every policy he proposed, he carried the weight of neighborhoods forgotten and dreams deferred. He was polished, bold, tireless. But behind every legislative win, behind every round of applause and standing ovation, there was something, or someone, echoing in his soul. A memory. A sandwich. A Bible. And a voice, as clear as Sunday morning, walk like a king. And he did. Not out of arrogance, but out of honor. Because he knew what royalty really was. Not privilege. But purpose. Not gold. But grit. Not a crown of jewels, but the words of a woman who saw it in him before he ever believed it himself. Behind closed doors, when the headlines faded and the crowds dispersed, Jalen would sometimes sit alone in his office, flipping through the tattered Bible he never stopped carrying. In the margins, her handwriting, faint but faithful, "You're still a seed. But God waters." And though he had everything, prestige, platform, power, there was a hollow space no political victory could fill. Because the one person who lit the match had never seen the fire. She wasn't there when he gave his first keynote. She didn't witness the televised debates that went viral. She wasn't beside him when he cast the deciding vote on a historic bill. But her prayers were. Her fingerprints were. And Jalen felt it, every time he opened his mouth. He didn't just speak from experience. He spoke from intercession. Still, deep within, a quiet ache stirred. Where is she? The woman who dared to believe in a king when all he saw was chaos. The woman who fed him dignity with a sandwich and taught him destiny in a single sentence. The woman whose name never made headlines, but whose faith shaped a senator. So he began to search. Quietly, humbly, desperately. Because it's one thing to rise. But it's another thing to return. And Jalen Rivers was ready to do both. The town of Oak Ridge hadn't seen this much commotion since the mayor accidentally baptized himself with hot coffee at a community picnic. But today's buzz wasn't about civic blunders, it was about a homecoming. Senator Jalen Rivers was returning. The flyers were everywhere: town hall, rebuilding communities with Senator Jalen Rivers' news van staked out the little red brick schoolhouse turned meeting hall. Drones hovered. Reporters rehearsed sound bites. Folks ironed their Sunday best on a Tuesday. The whole town was showing up. Everyone, that is, except Amara Wells. She didn't need the spotlight. She had laundry to fold. Soup to stir. Kids to raise. Her house was full of life, 6 foster children from different places, different wounds, all orbiting the gentle, grounded warmth of the woman who made everyone feel seen. She caught glimpses of the town hall through the old box TV in her kitchen. Jalen looked so grown. Tailored suit, crisp tie, commanding posture. Yet somehow, still that same boy with questions in his eyes. But Amara didn't cry. She smiled. God was faithful. That was enough. Or so she thought. 2 weeks later. National television. The Senate floor buzzed as lawmakers prepared for the final debate on a landmark prison reform bill. Jalen Rivers rose to speak. Confident. Poised. And then, he paused. Not for dramatic effect. But because emotion choked his throat like a memory catching fire. "I'd like to take a moment," he said, his voice rough with reverence. The chamber stilled. "This bill, this platform I stand on, this voice I've found, it's not just mine. It was built on the quiet prayers of a woman you've never met." He glanced toward the camera. His gaze pierced the screen like a sacred arrow flying home. "Amara Wells, if you're watching, your faith found me before I found myself. Your prayers carried me when my legs couldn't. This isn't just my seat. It's our victory." You built this. The chamber burst into applause. The nation leaned in. The internet detonated. Hashtag thank you Amara, hashtag prayers that built senators, hashtag the woman behind the man, Twitter, Instagram, news headlines, memes, sermons, even TikTok dances, because Gen Z is gonna Gen Z. Everyone wanted to know, who is Amara Wells? Reporters drove to Oak Ridge. DMs flooded. Camera crews lurked outside the little clapboard church. But before the world could reach her, something else happened. Another scene. Private. Quiet. Eternal. The moment Senator Jalen Rivers said her name on live television, Oak Ridge stirred like a pot in a revival tent. Reporters swarmed the town like bees chasing prophecy. They knocked on doors. Scoured church bulletins. Scrolled years deep into Facebook posts. But Amara Wells wasn't online. She wasn't impressed by blue checks or trending tags. She was busy making peanut butter sandwiches for hungry foster kids and teaching them the books of the Bible with crayons and construction paper. That's when Pastor Lionel intervened. A stoic man with a silver beard and a voice that could part Red Seas, or stubborn city officials, he stepped outside the chapel one morning to find a camera crew and a journalist holding a microphone like a sword. She's not hiding, he said, shielding the church doors with his frame. She's just serving. You want her? Go serve beside her. But someone else had already found her. Jalen Rivers' chief of staff, an Ivy League-educated woman named Keisha Rowe, had grown up in Oak Ridge too. She remembered Sister Amara from youth revivals and Sunday school stories. She flew in that night, armed with one thing reporters didn't have, respect. She didn't come with cameras. She came with a handwritten letter from Jalen Rivers himself. Amara read it by candlelight, with misty eyes and a hand to her heart. It simply said, "If I ever made you proud, come. Let them see what faith really looks like." She prayed on it for 2 days. Fasted for 1. Then she packed a single dress, the same deep blue she wore the night she first prayed over him. The next morning, a black SUV arrived. Not flashy. Just clean. Inside sat Keisha, waiting. "Ready?" she asked. Amara nodded, smoothing her curls beneath a fresh satin scarf. "No," she smiled. "But obedience isn't about being ready. It's about being willing." And so, escorted by angels in silence and security in suits, Amara Wells left Oak Ridge, not as a viral sensation, but as a vessel finally meeting her moment. Next stop. The marble halls of the U.S. Senate. The chamber was unusually full for a Friday. Whispers flitted like butterflies through the crowd. News anchors tried to look composed. Politicos clutched their phones, ready to live tweet what insiders were calling the most unexpected special session of the decade. But only one seat mattered that day. Front row. Cushioned. Reserved with handwritten calligraphy, Ms. Amara Wells, guest of honor. She entered quietly, but the room noticed. Her honey-brown skin glowing under the chamber lights, a satin wrap crowning her natural curls like it had 1,000 Sundays before. She wore no flashy jewels, just the dignity of a woman who had prayed empires into motion. Every senator stood. Every camera turned. She didn't walk, she glided. Escorted like royalty. Seated with reverence. And then the doors closed behind Senator Jalen Rivers. But this time, he wasn't carrying a stack of policy briefs. He walked slowly, one hand in his suit pocket, the other gripping the courage only love, and divine timing, can summon. He stepped to the podium. Cleared his throat. But the usual rhetoric wasn't there. No script. No stats. Just sincerity, trembling like a prayer whispered in midnight silence. "This chamber knows me as a senator. But I was once a boy. Lost. Angry. Hungry, for food, for direction, for meaning. And one woman, who owed me nothing, decided to believe in me anyway. He turned toward her. Everyone else blurred. She prayed me into power. Her faith built the wings I now fly on. And now, I stand before you not as a man in power, but as a man in love. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box, the kind that carries kingdoms. Amara Wells. You saw the king in me before I ever sat on a throne. Will you honor me again? By being my queen. Gasps. Applause. Cameras flashing. One senator audibly sobbed. The vice president whispered, "My God," and Amara. She stood, poised as ever. No trembling. No theatrics. Just truth in motion. She walked forward, eyes locked on his, a smile blooming like a sunrise. She reached him, leaned close, and whispered for only him and heaven to hear, "Only if we keep praying together." The chamber erupted. Jalen slipped the ring onto her finger. A delicate gold band engraved inside with the words, "Still a seed." They embraced. A long, silent embrace that made even cynics believe in miracles again. Outside, church bells rang from every denomination. On Twitter, #FromPrayer to Proposal late-night hosts called it, the most spiritual mic drop in political history. And in the archives of heaven, another answered prayer was recorded in ink that never fades. Weeks later, at the most anticipated wedding in the nation, there were no paparazzi. No exclusive magazine spreads. No designer gown sponsored by luxury brands. Just Oak Ridge, humble, holy, and home. The chapel hadn't changed in decades, warped pews, creaky floors, hymnals with dog-eared pages and handwritten prayers slipped between verses. But today, the air shimmered with something eternal. The woman who once knelt alone in that chapel now stood before the altar, hand in hand with the man her prayers built. Amara Wells wore a simple ivory dress. No train, no veil, just elegance spun from obedience and joy. Around her stood the children they'd fostered, some now grown, some still clinging to her skirt, as living legacies of her love. Senator Jalen Rivers, now husband, wore a tailored suit that couldn't contain the tenderness in his eyes. This was not the Senate floor. This was higher ground. The vows were whispered more than spoken, sacred like scripture, "I loved you before the world knew my name. And I'll keep loving you when they've long forgotten it." The rings were plain gold. But when he slid hers on, heaven didn't need diamonds. It needed witnesses. They didn't walk out to a standing ovation, but to the sound of children laughing, neighbors clapping, and birds dancing in the sky like angels just got their wings. And as they stepped out beneath the oak trees, older now, just like the town, they paused. Fingers intertwined. Futures aligned. Amara looked up at Jalen, her voice gentle but firm, the way only a praying woman can speak, "Now let's build something even greater, with God." He nodded, eyes misty, voice thick with promise, a legacy of faith. A nation of hope. One prayer at a time. And so, the woman who once whispered a boy's name into the heavens became the wife of a senator, the matriarch of a movement, and the quiet architect of a story the world would never forget. Not because she shouted, but because she believed. If you liked this story, kindly like, share and subscribe for more.